You'll often hear that it's not about how much time you spend revising, it's about what you do with that time. And that is true to an extent, but the amount of time that you spend revising is very important. And that's not just because, oh, it's time spent revising and you should be doing more of it. No, it's more because the more time you spend revising, the better you get at it. The more time you spend revising, the more it's going to be a consistent habit. And the more time that you spend revising, the more time that you're giving your brain to process and digest information before the exam itself. So I'm not about to tell you that you should be doing 10-hour study days, but I am going to tell you that the promises of doing 2 hours a day and excelling in all of your exams are probably not going to come to fruition. The amount of time that you spend studying does matter, and let's get into it in a bit more detail. During peak exam season, GCSE students should be looking at studying 4 to 6 hours, and A Level students probably 6 to 8 hours. That is obviously dependent on the extent to which you have revised prior to exam season, but there is also a degree to which revising for a decent amount of time between your exams during peak exam season allows you to keep content ticking over, and it allows you to stay in the frame of mind of being in exam season. Because the worst thing that can happen is you get to the half term in the middle of exam season and you think, oh my god, it's half term, I'm going to take a proper break, and you don't revise for 5 days straight. It's going to be so hard for you to find the mental motivation and the momentum to be able to get back into it. And you don't want to be facing that problem. So keeping things ticking over and keeping the intensity at a moderate level is going to allow you to stay in the zone, as it were, and focus a lot more on the work in front of you. The fact that you revise consistently, that trains your brain. It keeps you motivated, it gives you momentum, and it allows you to consistently build on what you've been doing in previous days. And you train your focus as you would train a muscle. You will never go from being able to only focus half an hour to being able to focus for 8 hours the next day. That's just not how it works. You've got to be consistent and you've got to be developing and building. And once you hit a level of focus that you're happy with, so say 4 hours, 5 hours a day, if you stop doing that, your focus is going to go down. Just like if you stop lifting weights, you're not going to be able to lift as heavy weights 2 or 3 weeks later. You need to be maintaining your ability to focus. Not only this, but repetition helps your memory retention. It helps you encode concepts in your brain, and later on, it's going to improve your ability to recall that information. So if you're really focusing on making sure you're spending a good solid chunk of time every single day revising, then you're going to be embedding facts in your brain a lot quicker than those people who aren't doing that. Even if in the day leading up to an exam, you're doing the same amount of work. Because you've been consistent, because you've been doing time over the previous weeks, over the previous days, you're still going to perform better. So while I have given you some numerical values, it's going to be different for everyone. And what I want you to do is I want you to sit down and ask yourself these questions. These are going to determine whether or not you actually are doing enough revision for yourself. And I want you to answer them very honestly, because the only person that you're going to be hurting by not doing so honestly is yourself. The first one, are you actually improving under timed conditions? When you're doing past papers, are you seeing your grades increase? When you're doing practice questions, do you notice that you're getting more of them correct? If not, you might not be spending enough time revising, or you might not be spending your time doing high impact revision. And you need to be tailoring things to make sure you're prioritising active recall, past paper questions, things like blurting and the Feynman technique, anything that is super active versus things that are passive, which are things like highlighting, rewriting notes, watching videos, and reading through a textbook. You need to be making more of that shift. The second thing I want you to ask yourself is, can you actually recall key content from your brain? You're only going to know whether you can do that if you have been using active techniques. Do you find that you are genuinely able to take the information and recall it? Because if you're revising it, you should be able to recall it. That's how it's going to be in an exam. You need to be recalling information. But if you're not able to do that, then there is a problem. Either, once again, you're not spending enough time doing your revision, or you're not revising in the appropriate way. And once again, you should be making that switch from passive to active. Another thing to ask yourself is, have you covered the same topic multiple times, spaced out over multiple days? If you haven't done that, then you won't have reinforced those neural pathways. You won't have been utilising the power of spaced repetition. And that's going to mean that you will have forgotten, let's say 3 days later, over 70%, according to the theory of forgetting curves, of the content that you originally had learned. You can't be doing that. You need to be utilising spaced repetition. So you should be revisiting topics every couple of days to make sure they are refreshened in your mind. You're going to be able to therefore go for longer and longer gaps between revising it without forgetting so much. The fourth thing that I want you to ask yourself is, can you apply the knowledge to exam style questions, to difficult worded questions, to questions that sort of seem to test one thing but are subtly testing something else? Can you actually read through a question as if you're x-raying it and see what it actually wants you to be talking about? That comes from exam technique, and that comes from doing past paper questions and past papers, which by this point should be a primary focus of your revision. So if you answered yes to all of those, you're on track, you're going to smash it. If you answered no, you're still going to smash it, because you are going to change. You're going to allocate more time to revision, and you're going to make sure that you are utilising the best revision techniques. If you are struggling to think of revision techniques, to find ones that are useful for certain subjects, do drop me a comment below and I will answer your questions, provide you with the better revision techniques for whatever you're trying to revise. Good luck for the rest of exam season, and as ever, I will see you in the next video.